everyone, can you believe it's already the 1st of September? It's crazy. Where did the summer go? We spent the last week of August somewhere with no internet, lots of birds and beautiful nature. I hope you managed to get out and enjoy this summer. There has been a lot of activity at my bird feeders recently, and it is going to get busy. You'll see throughout the show that there is a gray catbird that's coming to eat my homemade suet, and there's also a rose-breasted grosbeak eating like mad at one of my bird feeders. So this is what I'm asking you to do. Please fill up your feeders, give a varied menu to your birds. I've never seen a gray catbird at a suet feeder, but it's been doing this for days now. My suet has actually dry cranberries and dry raisins, and I think that's what it really likes. So again, keep your feeders filled, give a varied menu, and enjoy the fall migration. Art Beck from Ontario has a question about the Baltimore Orioles. This is actually something a lot of us here in northern states and Canada experience. So this spring we saw a lot of Baltimore Orioles coming to our backyard. So they were there for a few weeks and all of us were giving out those expensive oranges to them, and then they just disappeared, nowhere to be found. So Art wants to know, where do they go? What happens to them?
Hi Art. It's pretty hard not to be amazed by such a strikingly beautiful bird as a Baltimore Oriole. And we're lucky that they'll indeed grace our presence by feeding on orange slices impaled on thorns, spiked nails punched through a board, or on other sharp objects. They'll also come to feeders, usually of an orange color, for sugar water like that fed to hummingbirds, and even to grape jelly, also offered in a special orange-colored feeder. But suddenly one day they stopped coming to eat our treats. There are three possible reasons. First, they could be using our backyard as a temporary staging ground, and then moving elsewhere to appropriate habitat to set up a territory in which to raise their young. When birds start defending their breeding territories, they tend to not only spread themselves out, but become preoccupied finding transportable food to feed their young. Alternatively, we do know that orioles don't just subsist on citrus juice and sugar water. They also need protein in the form of insects and berries and natural nectars. They particularly like feeding upon hairy caterpillars, beetles, grasshoppers, wasps, spiders, and snails, and they really like cultivated berries too. Nor can they transport liquid citrus juice to feed their young. So these three possibilities, though, could be related. I'm betting that the orioles are still present in your neighborhood, but favoring those alternative foods which contain needed nutrients they don't get in the orange slices and which they can transport to their nest to feed their young. Nesting orioles generally spend their time high in the canopy where they raise their young in those hanging pendulous nests. Unless you can recognize their beautiful melodic songs, you might not even know they're there. Anyone who doesn't see that our climate is warming is a fool in my books. I've always felt in the world of our wild birds, there'll be winners and losers. New research out of Utah State University suggests there could be dire consequences for the bird species that birdwatchers like to see the most. The scientists divided North American bird populations into three categories. The first is resident birds, such as vultures, game birds, owls, and woodpeckers, which are sedentary and are adaptable enough to find food year-round. The second includes temperate birds, like your cardinals and wrens, which migrate within the continent of North America. And the third category is neotropical, referring to those birds that migrate from North America to Central and South America. This includes warblers, buntings, and orioles. Examining long-term data collected for the North American Breeding Bird Survey since the 1960s, the researchers focused on the breeding patterns of 32 eastern North American bird species from 1972 to 2014. Over that 43-year period, the birds in each of those three categories showed significant changes in their migratory patterns. The first two, resident and temperate birds, have responded to climate warming by expanding their ranges northward into the now warmer subarctic regions. But it's the neotropical birds, the ones that we like to see the most while bird watching, that we must be most concerned about. According to this recent study, their southernmost breeding ranges have not only shrunk in size, but they're not also expanding their range northward like the other birds. This suggests that the neotropical birds are not adapting to climate warming, which is likely affecting their breeding grounds, their wintering grounds, and their staging areas during migration. and they've already got enough to contend with in the form of pesticides, window collisions, cat predation, and habitat degradation due to urbanization.
Last fall, I shared a story about an endangered Australian bird species called orange-bellied parrot. These birds were put on a private jet and flown to Tasmania for their breeding season. And the reason for that is because the winds along their migratory route have become so strong that these birds just don't have enough strength to battle them. So the experiment was partially successful. So the parrots had their chicks, they hatched, and they were healthy. The problem is when they tried going back to their winter grounds, most of them died. So now researchers have to change their approach and not only worry about helping the birds going to Tasmania for their breeding season, but also the return trip has to be monitored. So the plan for the next year is let the parrots have their chicks, let them hatch in the wild, then they will capture them and keep them in captivity for a year until they're strong enough to fly back to their winter grounds. And a few stories on birds and governments on this episode. We'll start with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Hooray! Remember the draft that was being passed to allow incidental bird killings? Well, that was blocked by the U.S. District Judge Valerie Caproni, and now steps are being taken to make sure that the MBTA is going to be protected for good. And another city, this time Madison, Wisconsin, has just passed a law that as of the 1st of October 2020, all new buildings and enlargement projects will have to come with a bird safety anti-collision glass. And a Michigan state employee was surveying the shoreline of Lake Michigan with the help of a phantom drone when all of a sudden a bald eagle appeared out of nowhere, attacked the drone, which resulted in the drone falling into the water. So the employee thinks that perhaps those drones should come in a different color rather than white, because right now they might be mistaken for seagulls. Well, that was a funny photo contest. I loved watching all the birds having arguments and disputes. Now let's check out the top 5. Here's the 3rd place, the 2nd place, and the grand prize winner. Congratulations, everybody. Next month, before all the hummingbirds disappear, we're asking for hummingbirds in action. And don't forget to write their names. Well, goodbye for now. Again, try to have a rather varied menu, bird menu at your bird feeders this time of the year. There will be a lot of migratory birds passing through your backyards in the next few weeks. And if you participate in our photo contest, even though it's just hummingbirds, please do write the name of the birds. Take care, everyone. I'll catch you in 2 weeks.